then we're lining the sewer from A to F that's not being replaced. So that was identified as a portion of gravity sewer that was deficient, so that's being worked on. Another issue that was brought forward by the residents was we had originally we're going to stop all the work at F Street, and you indicated a preference to continue the East-West Street improvements all the way up to the railroad right-of-way. So we are adding that to the work on 2nd, 3rd, and 6th, I believe. So the other two streets were don't punch through across the tracks. So we are at almost at the 90% design stage, with the intent of pretty much having the plans done, ready for final comment by the city by the end of this month. And then I think you guys are looking to go to bid another month after that, so maybe in early October timeframe would be when construction would start. So we've got plans here if you want to look at what's happening specifically in front of your house. If you want to ask any questions, we can address that as well.
Somebody's gonna have a question.
I do. So, my understanding is that originally these roads were going to be repaired because we were doing water underneath them. But now we're not doing water underneath them, and we're going to continue to redo these roads, which most of them, compared to other roads in that area, are actually in pretty good shape. But we can't change it because that's not how the bond went out to vote. But now you're changing it to make it go all the way to the railroad tracks, which wasn't how it went out to vote. So can we, if there's some wiggle room there, can we not wiggle in some of these dirt roads we currently have, or some of these other areas that are in less worse condition?
Let me go back to the beginning, and we did have this conversation at the first meeting back in June. The 6th, 5th, 4th, and 3rd, is that where we're going to put the drainage?
Yes.
Yeah. The east-west avenues originally were scheduled to have exfiltration trench drainage per a report that was done several years ago by an engineering firm for the entire city. That's primarily why they were included in the program, because you're exactly right, they're not in bad shape at all, particularly 5th. So, and we got that feedback from the residents in the first meeting. They asked the same question, why are you doing this? So we went back and we part of Rebecca's scope was to analyze the drainage recommendations from that report and match them up against the drainage issues that we were looking at on the streets and see if it made any sense to do that work. And it turns out that it doesn't, because all the exfiltration trench that was scheduled to be put in there doesn't solve any of the surface drainage issues, which is what the program is designed to address. So we, staff, and we at their direction, removed all of the drainage that was going in these roads from the scope. So now we don't have to mill and overlay. We don't do anything with them except maybe fix some curbs and some broken sidewalk or whatever. That left us with the problem that because of the way the road segments were described in the bond issue, we have to do something. So what, and we were taking your suggestions into account, and the project by and large, except for the utility work and some areas of road that really need the overlay, the intersections to the west, basically it's going to turn into a streetscape program with the bulb outs, et cetera, and those types of improvements. So
A
that's
streetscape being what? I'm sorry.
well, we're going to factor these streetscape type of improvements that
Like
you
you're
guys
making it
requested.
pretty.
Right, so similar to what you have on 5th, where has the area where it's got the brick and then the tree planter at the intersection.
Pretty's really good, but I live on a dirt road. So
So which
So-
road is that?
8. which isn't on any of this, but, so, you know, again, pretty's good, I live on a dirt road, we have other dirt roads. I'm just wondering if you can move it all the way to, if we can move it all the way to the railroad tracks, why can't we wiggle some money into the dirt roads?
Well, that's, 8th is actually part of the CDBG program for next year, the allocation that we're using.
They've got
I'm talking about 9th, I'm
other
sorry.
funding.
I thought you said you live on 8th.
I know, I lied. I live on 9. I got
But she
confused
likes
for a
8.
minute. I got confused.
Well, 9th is not part of the CDBG program, that's actually 8th. What we were doing, the whole overview of the bond program is we were addressing existing city roadways that were failing. Which, you know, with the 40 million basically gets us up to a PCI, pavement condition index of 60. We still have a lot of other roads we need to address. That's going to be part of our actual maintenance program. But the bond's only taking care of about a third of the city, like 34%.
Okay.
So we weren't actually looking at bond funds to pave roads that currently are not paved, or any of the east-west streets, because we have a lot in the city that are unimproved right-of-ways that we're looking at doing greenways and stuff with. But the bond funds were specifically looking at existing roadways that we need to fix.
So, but if you don't need to tear up a road and you're basically just gonna slurry seal it and put on some pretty stuff, why can't we take that extra money and do something to some of the other roads that are, even if they're existing roads that are in worse shape?
They weren't part of the bond language that the actual public voted on. That's what we kind of get stuck with. You know, we had a list of roadway segments
Right.
throughout the city that was
I
part of that
understand that
bond
part.
program.
But you're already taking it to the railroad, right? Does that not change it to change the wording?
Change the wording.
Yeah, you're saying that we can't change the wording in the bond is what was voted on. We can't change that.
The roadway segments.
Right, but it didn't go to the railroad track, right, on the vote?
Wouldn't
did it?
half of that block already been done?
I think half that block was part
So
of it.
I think half of the block was
extending-
being left off.
Yeah, we're extending the roads to the railroad tracks maybe 100 feet.
But that segment was
But that
already listed
segment
in the
was already
bond.
in
Oh, it was? Okay.
Yeah.
That- I thought
Yeah,
you
we're
said
not
you were
adding new
extending it.
Actually,
streets,
they're going
yeah.
to the alleys from F to the
Yeah.
alley.
Yeah, so technically we didn't add any additional streets that were not in that initial bond language.
So now monies that we're gonna use to tear it all up is now just being used to make pretty? The same amount of money is being used on each street, or,
We're hoping not. We're hoping not.
so you might save us money, you think? Or were you gonna
Correct.
put the money?
Well, we're hoping to, and not with this project, but with all of the projects that we're managing here. We're trying to be as cost effective as we can while still getting a satisfactory product, because $40 million doesn't go very far. And we're finding as we go through the program that some streets need less, as here, need less work than we estimated, and there are other streets in this district as well as other districts that need more work. So we have to make sure that we're not diverting any bond funding away from the program until we get all those streets done, that are with the segments that are in the bond.
Thank you. I'm good.
So just a couple of questions, because just to understand the bond a little better. Is there movement between districts with bond funds? Is that an
There
issue
can
or
be.
not an issue?
Sure, it can be.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, so if we find that our roads don't cost as much money to maintain or to repair, but roads in another district, that money is fluid. It can be.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. When was the decision made, and who or what department, to not do the infrastructure work? And was that part of the bond originally? Because, I mean, the bond, and I'm sorry, I'm looking at you because you guys weren't here at our last meeting, so I'm just trying to understand this better. When this decision happened, because part of that bond, those roads were identified as part of an infrastructure improvement, as part of a utility improvement. That was part of the bond. That was why these roads were being redone. So now that project's not being done, but to say, well, we have to stick with the bond because that was the wording of the bond, that these roads were going to be redone. Well, it's already not being done, as it was spelled out in the bond, because those had a special designation, that they were part of a water project. So I'm just trying to understand this.
Sure.
When did the decision happen? Where did the money go that was supposed to be spent on the
Well,
infrastructure?
That money actually wasn't part of the bond money.
I realize that, yes.
And that, the drainage, I'm assuming you're referring to the drainage, that was the
Correct.
exfiltration trench. Yeah. That was, those recommendations, not only for this project or this district, but citywide,
Mhm.
were contained in a report that was done back in 2012 or 2013.
Yeah, by CDM.
By CDM. It was an extremely conservative report. It seemed to focus a lot on water quality. And again, exfiltration trench is extremely, extremely expensive, particularly in the volumes and magnitudes that CDM had designed or had recommended. And exfiltration trench in and of itself does not do anything to solve surface drainage problems where you have gutters that aren't draining or where you have sunken areas around structures, so you get ponding there, or where you have a lot of flat streets, particularly in your area, where it seems like it takes a long time for the water to build up in the parking lanes and run back and forth. The exfiltration trenches won't solve that.
You know, I heard this at our first meeting, but I actually my understanding seems to be exactly the opposite, that the issues that we have are exactly what this would deal with, and that we don't have issues of where the water needs to drain properly or where it needs to run properly. That's not the issue. The issue is flooding when we get heavy periods of rain, and this actually would help with that, would improve
Well,
that.
You have to understand that the report, and everybody reads the report and talks about, okay, we got to put all this stuff in so that we don't have the flooding. The flooding referenced in that report is a result of the report. That report is it's an engineering analysis based on certain parameters that were input into a program. There, as far as I know, and we've been talking to staff about this since the inception of the program, we're unaware of any historical areas in town, for the most part, that have histories of that magnitude of flooding.
So, but whoever did the
It's
report.
a basis of the assumptions that were put into the program when that report was done, and they were extremely conservative.
So, I mean, we paid for a report that we're already saying it never had the correct parameters put in the first place, so the report's no good? That doesn't even...
No, it's being refined. As we get into final design, that report is done at the 30,000 foot level. It's a planning study on an engineering design document. So at a planning level, they're doing modeling on what's called XP SWIM model. So that model takes a lot of assumptions into it, and they look at exfiltration as the way to solve the water quality issues for the city. And it's citywide. They look at it citywide, what we're discharging into the intracoastal as far as nutrients go and sediment. So to accomplish those water quality goals, CDM had recommended a lot of exfiltration trench throughout the city. Now we're on the road program, so we get into the final hard engineering design when you actually now have survey done, you have geotech work done, soil borings, etc. And they tend to refute some of what's in that study, and also we're looking at a bigger picture method to solve that problem, being ponds and expansion of the lakes at the golf course down by the intracoastal. So we're going to deal with the water quality issues in a more cost-effective manner. So what's happening on this program is we're dealing with spot drainage. So yeah, you've got issues on 2nd, 3rd, 4th at F Street, G Street, H Street, etc. So those are being dealt with localized collection systems that are going to tie in to the master drainage system, which functions well. Because after the last meeting, you guys had mentioned there might have been a blockage. We went out there with TV, inspected the line. There is no blockage. And we found out that, in fact, one of the assumptions CDM made in their model was that the pipe was undersized. It turned out not to be undersized. So when we physically verified it, what they were going off of were old maps, and that turned out not to be accurate. So things get more refined as we get into final hardcore engineering design, and then we tweak it. It's called value engineering to make sure that we're getting the best bang for the buck.
But I guess, to me, that report was enough to dictate a plan. Like, this plan was put together to do this project. The report wasn't just like, okay, we see a report, we might want to think about doing this. That report led to this plan, which was to put that drainage in and to tear up the roads and do it and to repave the roads, and all that rolled into the bond paying for the roads themselves. why we get to the point where the report isn't reliable and we don't need to do that work, I don't know. And no, the flooded streets that I saw were not undersized pipes, were not blocked drains, were not lack of drains. They were water coming in the reverse direction, back up the storm drains and flooding the
Right,
streets.
because we received 15 inches of rain in a 24-hour period, which is almost a 100-year storm. Street drainage is designed for 5-year drainage, 5-year or 3-year storm. 3 years on site, 5 years in the streets. So anything of that magnitude is going to overwhelm any drainage system that was put
So
in.
additional drainage to me would be
It's going
exactly
to
what we
eliminate
do.
like 90% of the problems. If you get a major storm, nothing is designed to accommodate that. For example, that day, Sunrise, the Sawgrass Mills Shopping Center was under 3 feet of water, complete shopping center and parking lot. That had been designed to accommodate a 50-year storm. Cannot handle a 100-year storm. That's what we received on that day.
But are we going to receive more of those storms? I mean, that's what scientists tell us. We're going to get more and more of those storms. So if the money was there to put these drains in to take care of this, why are we now not?
Engineers don't design for that magnitude of a storm, for a 100-year storm. There's risk involved, so the chances are 1 in 100 that it'll be exceeded in any given year. So we don't spend that kind of money. If we did, we'd have drainage pipes of 54 and 72 inch everywhere on every street to accommodate 100-year storms. The cost would be astronomical.
But
to
somebody
the public.
already decided to do these trenches.
No,
No, they didn't decide. That was a planning document.
It was a
That's not a
planning document.
decision.
Well, it was honestly planning enough to implement the cost of doing all of these roads after the
And
fact.
for us to vote on it.
And obviously, if all of this was in the works and the money was put in the bond to do the roads, there must have been money set aside to do the exfiltration trench as well. So somebody must have already decided that it needed to be done. I mean, none of this is 30,000 foot. This is not pie in the sky stuff. This is already decided. It's done. It was part of a bond. It was voted on.
Well, you're
And now
correct.
it's
that
not-
This isn't, what we're talking about was, like you said, it was a planning document, but when you actually get down in the details, when you actually start doing the engineering work, then you kind of realize that all of that's not necessary. We can actually, we can deal with the actual water quality further east, kind of like the baffle box. We currently have the golf course. There are better stormwater options as far as quality at the source than doing it all the way out west and putting a bunch of
But
exfiltration. trench in.
if that's the case, then this is a grand waste of money because something was written into the bond that shouldn't have been. I mean,
Or somebody discovered that way too late in the process is the idea, you know what I mean? It's like, how did it get to here? And you go, oh, well, we can do a better job if we do it, if we don't use that, we do this
That
further
always
east.
happens. Anytime you're in engineering design of a set of drawings, you tweak it as you go, and you find out that there's always a better mousetrap. There's many engineers can look at things a different way
But tweaking
and
it-
decide which way it's going to go to accomplish the same goal, but at a much lesser cost.
but
So-
tweaking it allows you to make changes, and at this point, you can't make changes. The money has to be spent, and it's being spent in a wasted manner because the reason why it was planned to be spent is no longer there. I'm just seeing a waste of money. I realize we get new roads, I realize we get trees and bulb outs, but I have to speak up. These streets don't need to be paved.
Well,
And-
they're
and
not
this is
being
a-
No,
paved.
they're not. The ones that don't need to be paid, they're not being paid.
The only reason they were being
paid
paved is because
That's
stormwater
what-
was going on underneath
Correct.
them.
because they
If
were
we
being
don't-
dug up.
Correct,
Right.
but if we don't have to dig them up, we wouldn't waste the money just to pave the street that doesn't need to be paved.
Well, now you're
They-
going against the bond, aren't you?
I don't want to the bond.
No.
But
We're
you
we're
said-
still addressing things on that roadway.
I don't-
Whether we're doing street trees, bulb outs at the intersections, fixing sidewalk,
ADA.
fixing curbing, ADA ramp, and everything, we are doing segments that are listed in the bond. Just because we're not doing an entire roadway, or doing stormwater on that particular segment, we're still doing work on that segment.
I guess maybe then everybody's, or at least from my perception of the language of the bond,
Mhm.
is that it was super specific, like we are paving 6th Avenue South or 6th Avenue North. Now that we're not doing that because of whatever, in my mind, like, it doesn't make sense that, I guess it is in your parameters that we're not gonna pave it, but we're gonna put the pretty trees and the whatever.
We
That is
basically
that, and that
listed,
is that.
yeah,
I
we
mean, so I guess
listed what
that's
could
the-
be covered under the bond, so
Okay,
whether
so
it's.
that's, because I think when you, because it's been drilled into us that the language is super specific, there is no, what we're doing is what we're doing, we we can't finagle. So
It's-
that
it's-
sounds like finagle.
No, no,
I
it's
guess my point.
specific to infrastructure, meaning we
Okay.
can't.
So that it was really specific and now it's like it's not so specific.
No,
You know?
if there was a
I
roadway
just think-
segment listed in the bond, it will be improved.
Right.
Now, whether that's.
But
whether
yeah,
that's-
it'll be improved, but what you were presenting in the beginning was that it's going to be repaved and da-da-da-da-da. You see what I'm saying? So yes, you're still gonna improve it because you put 6th Avenue North in there. You have to do something with 6th Avenue North because it was listed. But when you, from my perspective is, what you have to do to 6th Avenue North is exactly what you said you were gonna have to do.
But remember, they didn't get real specific in the bond, which was part of the reason people didn't want to vote for the bond, because they
Well,
couldn't
and
figure
that's
out
what I'm
what was
saying,
actually
maybe
gonna
that's where
happen on their
it's
street.
my sort of misperception
The
of,
improvements, as Jamie said, list many elements, including curbs, sidewalks, bulb outs, calming, overlays, reconstructions, et cetera, and it depends
Right.
on segment by segment what's actually needed once we get into the hard engineering design.
We base the program on planning documents, you know, the
Yeah,
roadway
I get it
study,
now,
the
I just-
sidewalk study, the drainage studies, the water main studies. It's what these planning documents that go into it, and that creates the program from a 30,000 foot or 15, whatever you want to call it, view. Not that hard detail. Now we're getting into, and then we all voted on that. I'm a resident as well, you know, we all vote on information we have at the time. And then money's there. Now we hire the engineers and the people to delve into the details and tell us that, oh yeah, you do need that stormwater. We're adding stormwater areas that we didn't think we needed it at and incurring that cost. We're taking away from areas that we don't need it, hence 6th, 5th, you know, those areas. So you dive into the details, kind of like with your own home. Do
yeah,
I
but
need
I
a new
think
roof?
what
Do I need a
every,
new patch? You know,
but I
like
think
those sort of things.
what a lot of citizens might get choked up on is the fact that, you know, I don't know, I mean, I'm just not making myself
Maybe I can
clear.
help.
No, I mean, I get your perspective, but, you know, as a citizen, I'm not looking at a 30,000 foot view, I'm looking at what, you know what I'm saying? So.
In order to
so
do what you're saying.
I don't think that
the
most of us
bond would-
know the
yeah.
difference between, like, now we're doing the hard, whatever you said,
Yep.
from the 30,000 foot view, because that's like Chinese to me. You know what I mean? You know it because you're involved in
Sure.
the process. But as a normal citizen, you know, there isn't any difference between your 30,000 foot view and now what you're getting down to the brass tacks. You know what I'm saying? Because I voted on this,
Mhm.
so this should be, does that make sense?
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? I mean,
sure.
I get it, things ebb and flow and
Your
things
perception,
change.
yeah.
But I don't know that there's a 30,000 foot view and then a hard scramble or hard skate. You know what I'm saying? That's, I think, is the difference.
Yeah,
is I
at
don't-
the end of the day, we have $40 million, and it's not a lot of money. If you
I
remember correctly,
realize
a couple
that.
years ago, you
Trying
know,
to-
initially we were looking for 63.5
I get it.
million. The name of the game, like when you kind of get to the end of it all, is we need to be very fiscally responsible for what we're actually spending money on. Because as you said, you know, some of these are coming in under what we thought, some are coming in over based on having to do stormwater in areas we didn't think we were going to have to. So where we're kind of borrowing back and forth here, the end game is to kind of, you know, even out at the end, so we're kind of level. So these projects are kind of going to be one like this, more than likely, like construction. Anytime you can run into unforeseen conditions, but we have to be responsible as far as what we're actually putting the money toward. So if we run into situations like this where it's really not necessary to rip up an entire roadway and put in all the exfiltration trench that's not going to do anything for the flooding issue, would help the water quality, but we can take care of that further east down by the golf course. There's no need to waste all that money for no reason.
No, we get that, but I think you're gonna run into like a whole hiccup with the city and like now, you know, it's already like we don't trust anything that you say.
I need
Some
to-
people- You know what I mean?
You know me, I sit through all these meetings and I see it
So
from
I-
all sides. One philosophy I know that they always had was that if they're gonna err on anything, was to be conservative about everything they were doing, whether it was the financing and what kind of interest rates they were gonna get.
No, I'm
and
all
what
about
areas
them
they were
being
gonna do.
conservative and
So the
looking at
reality-
it.
But the reality is that they're finding a lot of areas that aren't as bad as they were hoping it would not, you know, that if it was gonna be that way, they were gonna be conservative about it, but they're finding a lot of areas that aren't that bad.
So
there's
isn't that
the beauty of
controversial?
that. So,
Yeah.
but the beauty of it is that now they can do other things with
That's
it.
I
cool. I have a
understand.
question though. You keep saying water quality. Are you talking about drinking water quality?
No.
Intercoastal.
Stormwater.
We're talking about the water that goes
Stormwater.
into,
Correct.
goes past all of the Roundup parks. The parks with the Roundup in them, and that isn't great. Okay, and then, oh shoot, I had another question. I'll think of it. I forgot what the other question was. All right.
No, I get why you're not ripping it up just because, but you know what I'm
No,
saying?
I
That's
appreciate
like-
that.
Yeah, I mean,
But-
I do as well. but-
I know, I appreciate not ripping up things that, are you taking into account, Palm Beach County just updated their flood zones? So we have more flood zones now, right? I
Well,
mean, they
the-
just did
the
it
maps,
this
Not
week.
yeah.
Lake Worth,
Yeah.
fortunately.
Huh?
We had
Not
to,
Lake Worth.
we had to fight to get the maps
We
corrected
had
because
places
initially they
removed
showed a lot
from
of
those maps.
areas added to the flood zones. which
And you
shouldn't have
didn't
been.
want them to add it?
No, they
Add
don't
them
flood.
to a
Why
flood
would the
zone.
homeowners have to pay flood insurance when it's not necessary?
Because it may actually flood? Because
The
science
areas that
actually
were on the map
shows
do
that it will
not
flood?
They don't flood. The areas that were being
We may
added.
be on the wrong side of history on this one.
No, the elevations, so they talk about the
Based on
elevations.
elevation,
Yeah.
first floor elevation of your property, and that's well above the 100-year flood
Yeah,
zone.
and they had incorrect data that they were trying to push off as the correct data, but it was off. The data
Are
was
you
off.
guys
creating that
sure?
map.
I mean,
Oh,
we
yeah,
can't-
yeah, because we have the building permits
Are
that
you
show
allowed to
fifth
say
floor actual
climate
survey
change
grade
in Lake Worth?
information.
Yeah, the whole point is, all the areas that were added initially, basically you're doubling and tripling people's flood insurance, so they're gonna be required to get it.
For no
And there's no need to do that for no reason, so they needed to go back and reanalyze the data. And then obviously when they did it, they were able to pull all that back out again. So we were trying to help out, residents and save money where, they don't need to spend money unnecessarily.
Well, I
No
of course
amount,
We'll take your
appreciate
money.
no
it.
amount of drainage
You want your
improvement is
money.
gonna change that.
I'll take it, yeah.
I'm sorry?
No amount of drainage improvement or exfiltration trench is gonna change where this maps are going.
I don't really understand that statement. You're telling me that no amount of drainage would help flooding according to the way.
No. The FEMA maps, the changes to the FEMA maps.
Yeah,
They're based on elevation.
They're based on.
I understand.
They're not based on drainage facilities.
well, I understand they're not based on drainage facilities, because if they're based on elevation, then maybe we need more drainage facilities in the areas that they're claiming are now flood zones.
Maybe this is a different topic. I
Yeah,
assume
it's
that
not the roads.
the national maps were based on elevation,
Correct.
and you were finding that the elevation stated in those maps was not correct.
Correct.
Oh.
Yeah. What they use to fly over, and correct me, is LiDAR data.
LiDAR
They basically
data,
fly airplanes
which
over.
was incorrect.
Incorrect, that's within, I think, 2 feet. What is it, plus or minus 2 feet, which is that's terrible. We have information we have to provide from people's building permits, and stuff like that on the finished floor, which is survey grade, which is within, I think, an inch or half an inch or something like that or less. So we provided proof that their data was incorrect and our data was,
Do they show it to you before they publish it? Publish it?
Oh, yeah, there's a whole process where they have to put out notifications, and then you have so long actually.
The city has so
Just to-
long.
To review all the data, if
Okay.
you need to,
Right,
yeah.
Jamie?
so-
And that's
We
just
have to get in boats. I'm
that's
coming
just
after you.
Paddle into your house.
We're just saving people money. I mean, it's-
well, that's just the city trying to double
Protect
check
our
or make sure that the reports are as accurate as possible. Or
Absolutely.
does the city have
No,
some?
that's us trying to make sure that they're as accurate as possible, and making sure that we don't have residents paying astronomical flood insurance rates when they really shouldn't be.
And not just this
Disincentives.
city, every city
Every
and the
city.
entire county. This was
Yeah.
taking place over the course of years with FEMA.
So
To make
let me-
sure the mapping was accurate.
Let me ask a couple of questions to make sure that I'm clear. The bulk of these roads that we're talking about, because it's only 2 blocks on C Street between 3rd and 5th, that were being milled and overlaid based on their PCI scores, correct? Now, every one of these other streets, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th, were originally included to be done strictly because they were being torn up to do exfiltration trench.
Third, we knew we were doing sewer, so that was.
Okay,
That was in there, and and then 2nd, 4th, and 6th, I think, were the ones with the exfiltration trench. May 5th too.
so 3rd is the only one that's different in the east-west streets, and that sewer project is still being done.
Yes.
Okay, so 3rd Avenue is being torn up and is being what is the term I should be using?
Reconstructed.
Reconstructed, okay,
It's only
For some portion of it.
yeah.
Where they're
okay,
lining the sewer, we're gonna mill and overlay,
okay.
because it's less expensive.
Okay,
and-
so
and
2
does-
blocks of it
Does the job.
are being reconstructed, the rest is mill and overlaid, yeah. So if these streets at some point I asked for the PCI index for these streets. I was told that was in, because at this point the PCI index is kind of covered up because it says WP, or I forget the designation for a project. So there's no way to tell what the original score was. I suspect it would not have qualified to have been even milled and resurfaced. So you're telling me that the street still has to be done because that block, and I'm sorry whoever I look at or who I'm directing questions to, I'm just trying to understand it. It's not any kind of, I'm not incriminating anybody. Because this block was originally designated in the bond, even if it was designated for complete reconstruction, you still have to do something to it because it was included in the bond. Okay. Does that include all of these streets at least being milled and resurfaced, or are you able to do even less than that, meaning just bulb outs and trees and not doing anything to the surface of the street?
Yes.
Yes.
So,
As little
so
as
we may see
do.
many of these streets that are not being even scratched on the surface of the street, but some improvements being done to them, or sidewalk replacement,
Or
or things
tree,
like that.
or a
That's
curb,
correct.
or.
That's something I did not understand. I understood that all the streets were being milled and resurfaced at least, even if they didn't need them. So you're telling me that's not the case, but
Correct.
improvements are being made. Okay. Where does, this is going to sound more direct than it is, it's just curiosity. The money that obviously to reconstruct a road is much more expensive than to mill and resurface, or to even do nothing and just bulb outs and trees. The money that would have originally been to reconstruct all of these roads, which is a big chunk, I mean, all of these roads were originally supposed to be reconstructed. Where does that money go?
It's part of the bond program.
Okay.
We did 2 borrowings. You have, we did the initial borrowing, which is basically for the first 2 years,
Mhm.
and then the second borrowing, which actually finishes up the program. So as you're doing these projects, it's not that you have we have a budget obviously for each project, but it's part of that first borrowing. So all of those projects in all 4 districts for years 1 and 2 fall under that particular dollar amount that we took for the first borrowing of the $40 million. And then the balance of that is the second 2 years, years 3 and 4. So it doesn't really go anywhere. It's still part of the bond program. It's one large pot of money for that first 2 years.
Okay.
So what we don't spend on one particular project is still part of that pot of money. If we spend more on one particular project than we were supposed to, it's still the same pot of money.
Okay. The exfiltration trench, which was not part of the bond,
Correct.
I just for the record, I'm concerned that if there was a report that said it was needed, are we not doing it because of budgetary constraints? Or because genuinely it's been determined we absolutely do not need it? And if so, whose shoulders does that decision fall on?
It has been determined by re-looking at the model, rerunning it, and looking at alternate methods to solve the same problem. So, as I mentioned before, working with expanding the lake system down at the golf course, adding baffle boxes down at the discharges to the intracoastal, accomplish the same function at a lesser cost.
So
That's
whose
right.
shoulders does the
Put
decision?
that on my
have to be?
shoulders. I'm the director of utilities,
Okay.
and I'm the city engineer, so.
Okay.
I'll take some.
And
Can I hear some of that? Yeah.
was that decision at all based on money or cost?
Yeah, obviously, when you value engineer something, you're looking to do the same project or better at a lower cost to the residents and to the ratepayers. So that's always our goal. As Jamie mentioned before, we have, fiduciary responsibility. So we don't just throw money away, we make sure it's spent wisely.
So was the money originally set aside to do this project, or was it
No,
never
it was
there?
not.
It was never there to begin with?
There's some. We have a stormwater utility budget, which includes roughly $500,000 to $1 million a year of improvements. To accomplish what was in that report, there was nowhere near enough money to do that. So at some point in time, if someone were to want to do all of those improvements, they have to go out for a separate bond issue to fund stormwater improvement.
Yeah, it was around $21 million
20 million, yeah,
total.
21, 22 million.
Total of stormwater projects in that initial report back then.
So
Statewide.
on a sliding scale, where would I figure out the decision actually came down? Was it money or was it not needed?
Not
It
needed.
wasn't needed. And that's why we didn't want to waste the money on it. If we don't have to put it in, we wouldn't want to, use stormwater funds when we can use that in other areas of the city, because we do have areas that we have real major needs, so we would want to allocate that money to those. But when they started the stormwater master plan, none of us were here back then. I kind of came in as they were finishing that report, so I came in, and it's not just the stormwater master plan. There were some other interesting, I guess interesting would be the word to use, traffic calming reports that had been done previously, and there were some things that were kind of selectively studied, I guess you would say. So I had a shelf full of studies that weren't necessarily usable. Had we started that stormwater master plan now, I can tell you it would look a lot different than what it came out with, because we would have had a different philosophy than people at the time that were here had. We would not have looked at doing all of that exfiltration trench way out west. We would have looked at more dealing with quantity of water, and then look at the actual quality further east at the actual source of the intercoastal. So it was kind of just a different methodology, I guess, when they were kind of looking at the plan and the direction that engineering firm was getting at the time from staff who was here. But if we did a completely new plan now and that one didn't exist, it would be a lot different. So
was the money? Hi, sorry I'm late. It's my first time, so forgive me if I'm coming late to the party. Was the money allocated or determined that we needed or budgeted in based on an original need that later was decided we didn't? In other words, what was in place? I'm sorry, I'm looking right between the
No,
two.
sorry.
Yeah, no, studies, in a way, studies are always nice, and it's nice to say, hey, we'd like to do this, we'd like to do
Right.
that, without considering the amount of money that's involved in doing that. So, but as a city, we've got to watch our funds, and we're only limited, without raising stormwater rates exorbitantly, we're trying to hold the line on those and keep them steady year after year. And in order to do that, we can only spend X amount of dollars on capital improvements. So as I mentioned before, that's about maybe $500,000 to $1 million is comfortable that the city can absorb without having to raise rates. So we work within those parameters. We only got X amount of dollars every year to do, and we target the most specific projects that will help the overall situation. As I mentioned and Jamie mentioned, we're looking at improvements, because you mentioned climate change and sea level rise. So the intercoastal, we experience the king tides quite frequently, and more coming up this fall. So that's where we're really focusing our efforts on the stormwater system, is to combat those with baffle boxes, improved outfalls, check valves, and things of that nature. So it's transformed from a plan that was done in 2012 by people that aren't here anymore,
Okay.
with a certain vision, looking at one aspect of it when we're in here now, and we're looking at it more judiciously.
It's the quiet smart one. Yeah, look out for.
So if it's already 90% done, what 10% isn't done?
Well, we're still waiting on some additional survey to extend
50%.
over to the railroad right of way. We're trying to get some additional information on some of the existing drainage system, so that we can, along with we're doing like soft digs, where you have a firm that goes out there and they dig a hole and try and find like existing telephone lines that are buried, or water main that we need to know where it is, so that when we build something new, we don't run into it. So we have the contractor out there doing that for us. So it's really just a kind of a refinement of, we pretty much have where the broken sidewalk is, where you're gonna get new signs, where the bulb outs are gonna go. It's pretty much ready to go, just.
So we don't get
survey.
to pick anything? We're done?
You're just mad because you didn't get to come put stickers up.
I'm disappointed in the stickers too. I
stickers.
thought it'd be like a palm tree sticker and bush sticker. Maybe for the other people, maybe College Park will get the palm tree sticker.
This is the list of,
We're on the west side, we get
yeah,
orange.
this is the list of trees that were selected for Fifth Avenue North, so we're gonna use that same tree palette.
Okay.
I guess if there could be some,
No, that's okay, whatever, you really just at the store. What do you want?
I love Hong Kong orchid trees.
You want orchid tree? You can have an orchid tree.
They're all nice trees.
So the orchid tree in front of Stephanie's house.
So
Those are the
they're
ones
all,
that are really messy, right?
they're all indigenous
Yeah.
trees, right?
No,
Because it goes without saying.
okay.
They're water.
No, not for me, you know who's gonna ask you.
Oh, yeah.
the city arborist had a
Is he next door?
say
Oh, that's
in
right, tree
this,
board's
so-
meeting next door right now.
Can you read off the trees?
Sure. Wild tamarind, live oak, tababuia, which I don't even think I said that right, but
You did.
pink or gold, a pongum,
Totally pink.
HK orchid, satin leaf, and a paradise tree.
Okay. So those are a mix of non-natives and natives.
Those were
They're nice.
selected or approved by the city's arborist for, what do you call it? They'll drink a lot of water.
Xeriscape.
Ah.
No,
Well, xeriscape
Not
is-
xeriscape,
Drought tolerant?
drought
Drought
tolerant,
tolerant.
drought tolerant,
Right.
so, and I'm sure it has elements of easy to maintain, you don't have to go out there and trim them all the time, you know, so it's cost effective.
That's what I was actually gonna ask about, because Jamie, you and I both know the reality of getting around, to how the city is able to get around to some of these things. They don't always have the manpower. So what are they doing as far as irrigation, that initial time period when they need to be constantly maintained, that's gonna take a lot of your resources, so.
Yeah, and in the long term, you know, obviously we're not looking for a lot of shrubbery and a lot of things we're going to have to constantly be out
Right.
there trimming and everything. So we're looking for trees and larger
Low
landscaping.
maintenance.
And so
Very,
what's-
very low maintenance. Water
So
truck.
I guess I'm looking for some sort of a guarantee that at least for the next few years, those trees are still gonna look as close to what you planted.
Yeah. I mean, look at
You know
some
what
of
I'm
the
saying?
greenways we've done. Those are a good example. where
Right,
You gotta look
right,
at how.
but I'm saying, but now there's even more.
Yeah.
And you're doing more greenways. And I don't know if the city budget is planned for more staff, or another water truck?
They
or-
said you were gonna go out there with your hose, Marshall.
Sure.
You volunteered.
I'm gonna,
It's your
I'm gonna get a
day.
big,
And put it on
get a big
Facebook.
55-gallon garbage pail with all the tools on wheels.
Wednesdays and
Yeah, yeah, we
Thursdays,
take
it's
that into account with the budget as far as
So is that-
manpower, as
so
far as
when it-
equipment, yeah.
Okay, so now, since we're in budget season, so look at the maintenance. There's maintenance of the roads, then there's maintenance which is gonna fall under your department, what do you wanna call it, Parks Department, or some other,
Yeah,
grounds is fine, thank you very
grounds.
much. So the reality is that gonna be maintained also, because you're gonna have a lot more.
Mhm.
And over the next 4 years, you're doing a lot, planting a lot more.
Mhm.
Okay, just,
If you remember correctly, last year and the previous years, we had a lot of part-time positions and grounds and all kinds of other stuff going on. We have no part-time positions anymore. Everything is
Oh,
full-time because
is
a
it
lot
all
of those
full-time?
positions were pretty much vacant
Oh.
the entire year. You get someone on
Okay.
board, they're here for a couple weeks. It's hot
Right.
work, it's long work.
it's all city
and then they're
employees though,
gone.
you're not using, it's not licensed, it's not being contracted out then?
It's
gonna be-
our in-house is supplemented with an outside vendor, LV Superior. And they have particular lots in the city that they actually maintain.
And you're gonna monitor them?
Well, they've been here for
Contractors?
yeah, they've been here for 2 years.
Oh, all right, good, yeah. That was
That's
the
nothing
prior
new.
one I know was it, okay.
Yeah, that's nothing new.
Okay,
So
all
yeah,
right.
they have actual properties and vacant lots and stuff throughout the city that they maintain. We still do the parks, we still do a lot of other stuff, so it's kind of
Okay.
a coordination.
Okay. No, I mean, you know why I'm asking this, because not just the structural things about roads and sidewalks, we don't want any of that to have a problem, but the reality is that people know of what they see.
Mhm.
And what they see is what's gonna be planted and all that beautification, and that could just easily be turned into something as a negative, so. But the
Absolutely.
beauty is we have a palette of an entire city that really could use a lot of
Yeah.
landscaping.
Yeah, the
So-
west side could use some love.
Well, it's what, I mean, if you ever saw, there's actually, I don't know where it is, and it's on the city website, there's an aerial map, that will actually, or an aerial photo that shows prior to the hurricanes, about 12 years ago, and right after. The city, what did we lose, just over half the canopy? I mean, seriously,
30%, you know.
it's stark. the tremendous change that they used to have with shade and so forth, so it's
Really.
big difference, yeah, so.
Other than the reconstructing, the mill and resurfacing, can you give us some more specifics then on your plan for the bulb outs,
Actually, we have a set of
How many
90%
where-
plans up here.
Okay.
We'll
All right.
finish with questions if you guys want to come up and take a look at them.
Okay.
See what's being proposed.
so, just,
That just
so
slowed
it's a
all the
little more
traffic down,
organized,
too.
the current Fifth Avenue bulb outs are 4 on each intersection, so 1 on each corner, and they're infilled with brick pavers. Just, how does that differ from, or is that
Same.
same? Okay.
The same, although not necessarily every corner will have a bulb out. If there is a drainage inlet where the bulb out was gonna go, we omitted the bulb out so that the drainage would continue to function, because otherwise we have to move the drainage inlet or do some kind of a trench behind a bulb out, and it just was not feasible.
Is that, did that happen often, or?
No, not
Okay.
much. I think one place on Second and maybe on another one on, maybe 1 or 2 other spots, maybe 3 total. But generally, we have bulb outs at all the corners. We also did not do bulb outs east of F Street, mainly because of proximity to the railroad tracks and sight distance concerns and just
East of F Street?
east, on
There's
the
really
east
nothing
side
there.
of
There's
F.
Between F Street and the alley.
Oh,
They're not necessary there.
but, yeah, okay, there would be no place to put them, but okay, I get it.
Right. There was too many restrictions and considerations for that. So, I'm not gonna say every single place has a bulb out. We try to
Okay.
put it in most
And
places.
traffic patterns, stop signs, nothing really changes.
So we have stop conditions east-west at every street. I think we might have a couple north-south stops.
They're staying where
Whatever it
they're
is
at.
now, it's gonna stay the same.
Okay.
Are you adding any more stop signs? Because I know like in the Royal Poinciana neighborhood, when you guys put all the, at 3rd Avenue South, the north-south direction traffic, they all got stop signs, so they're all 4-way stops now. So I know that's slowing a lot of people down from what they used to fly. And I think it's up your way, isn't it over on like D? D is like a major fly zone I hear, like up the north, more towards the north end maybe, but Scottish
it's
Rite
a-
south of it, but
If the neighborhood requests more 4-way stops, what's the city, or 3-way stops depending on the street, what's the city's thoughts on that or attitude on that?
Take a look at it from, the data. We had
Yeah,
part of the.
Cost is minimal. I mean,
Yeah,
so-
it's
stop signs aren't that
Look at
much.
the data. They did a traffic calming, traffic study as part of their design process, looking at everything in the details. So we looked at all the information, kind of like we did last time with Fifth Avenue North, adding them there, we can look at.
I mean, I know there was a concern about having too many, or.
Sure. Yeah, it's not the best always to put stop signs
Right.
everywhere.
Okay.
So we look at either, speed humps or chokers or stop signs, what's the best for the area, given the situation.
But I also think, honestly, that I think it'd be difficult to find residents who are opposed to more stop signs.
Mhm.
I think they were very well received.
Good.
Everybody recognizes that our primary issue is speeding cars, and it is very effective. Even if somebody does not come to a complete stop, you're still slowing down traffic.
Sure.
And so-
I think that they were very well received.
And the bulb outs too, because we have it, I'm over in Bryant Park, but 6th Avenue, we have 3 or 4, I think, right?
Three.
3 bulb outs over there. Initially, you have to get used to it, because you think it's too narrow to drive by. You can actually drive just fine without any problem, but it does slow a lot of people down. It slows a lot of people down, much more so than before, so.
Yeah, there are some one-way streets, and D Street is a prime example, that it's one-way north, and you can go, at one point, I think I counted the blocks, you could go like 7 blocks before you hit a stop sign.
That's a whole flying, yeah.
And in that area up there, we're adding some traffic calming, we're also adding some more stop signs because of that.
As a cost savings, I don't know how many signs you're replacing, because there are a lot of faded signs all over the city.
Sure.
they're not cheap. But the reality is they're gonna put a brand new spanking new one up and just take the old one down. What are they doing with those?
Recycle.
So you can paint, you'll be painting over those and using those?
No, no,
Because if
no,
you wanna
no.
add more signs,
We should recycle them.
Yeah, we're
Go ahead.
physically
really throw them
recycling.
in the recycle?
We do, it's aluminum.
Can I ask you something? Can we just paint over them, even if they do it in-house? I mean, it's like a material that you're applying to it, right?
They need to be reflectorized, yeah, it's an
Right,
actual
but can't
sticker that
you-
goes over the aluminum.
Because like they wanna add more stop signs, but if you're gonna have some old faded ones, and we can get the material to put over them,
It's,
there's a brand new sign right there.
well, it's, the stop signs give you a reference, like $25 for the sign. To take it down, bring it somewhere, to have them resurface it, you're spending that at least anyways.
Well, I know if in-house you could do
Back to the
some of this
sign.
stuff, sometimes these things are less expensive to do.
Yeah.
You're such an environmentalist, Marshall.
Let me tell you something, when
The,
they used to do things in the city, they would send everything out. I mean, the previous city manager wanted to do everything was private contractor. They started doing stuff in-house, they saved a fortune. How much you guys saved when you did, remember when you did the, up at the pool? Which is now closed again. But you had to do some work in the pool, rebuild something in there? Didn't they save like 150,000 or something? I mean, it was a serious amount of money.
Rebuilt a lot.
You had some guys, no, you had some guys that were of the plumber, you know, the plumbing type. They were able to do the work themselves rather than sending it out,
So specifically about the stop signs, it just, rather than just leave it open-ended, we originally had a request to do three-way stops, four-way stops, whichever would apply a lot on 3rd Avenue in addition to 5th. And we just ended up doing 5th, and I think one at 7th and F. Can we just look at those, sorry, I'm
Sure.
looking at you, Philip.
Mhm.
Can we just look at those that had already originally been requested?
Sure.
And see if we can go ahead with them, rather than just leave it open-ended?
Sure.
Those would be specific locations.
Yeah. See, it's easy to add those things, you know, when the contractor's building, it's easy
Okay.
to make a change at that point too, because it's just a menu of
Right.
buildable items.
So that would be
Yeah.
3rd Avenue from A to F.
Is that a heavy drag? Is it
Yeah.
because they can go over the tracks right there? Is that
Yes.
why? Okay.
Yes, it's also, honestly, it's quite difficult because of the limited visibility as
Mhm.
well. I think
Yeah.
it's just safer
Remember the cars
to be
parked.
Yeah. Sight lines.
three-way
I mean,
stops
for
and four-way stops.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, it slows traffic going north and south. If you have a stop sign, that's great, and that's a great benefit. It does slow traffic. But just as a safety
Mhm.
standpoint, to come up on those intersections and know that everyone is stopping.
Sure.
Is because the visibility between the,
Terrible.
we have so many cars parked on the street, it is really bad.
Yeah, we certainly look at that.
Okay.
Did you write that down?
It's
Write
in
it down.
my
Okay.
area.
Oh, there she is. Okay.
Some areas where we have
Burns in the back of my head.
situations at intersections, because there really are no safe triangles in terms of rights of way, because of the age of the city. If we can't, the bulb outs help tremendously with that, because it keeps parking back from, it protects the parking out, but it keeps it back from the intersection.
Yeah.
In areas where we can't do the bulb outs, we'll strike that out.
How does how do the bulb outs and the trees placed in the bulb outs, and I assume the bulb outs are right up to the intersection, like they are at 5th Avenue. Is there a guideline as far as signage and stop signs? Because I think the stop signs were originally placed close to the intersection, and then of course they get obscured by the trees, so a lot of them were moved back for visibility, but I don't know what's actually the DOT
6 feet.
standard.
Yeah.
So they're supposed to be close to the intersection.
Correct.
Okay.
The guideline is more, in a situation like that, really is more functional when you use the guideline for the trees, because you don't want to put trees in there that, you know, you can't see around when you're sitting in your car.
Yeah.
So there's a certain minimum clear trunk distance that needs to be on that tree,
Okay.
so that it doesn't cause that unsightly problem.
And I'll reiterate what Marshall was saying. You know, we've had issues. Don't take this as a personally, but we've definitely had issues on 5th Avenue North, where trees and brick pavers and other things just have not been maintained.
Mhm.
Trees have not been replaced. Brick pavers haven't been, cleaned or sprayed for weeds. So I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate it. I just also want to state that clearly we're adding all of these things, and it's awesome, and I think it's going to look beautiful. Just, want to make sure that they do get maintained.
Yeah.
Does maintenance require budget? What are the man hours that needs to
Sure.
give attention to it? Pressure washing, weeding, watering?
But it's also a matter, like Jamie said, we're starting to staff up more and get, the supervision. Really, it's a matter of that manager, supervisor having the detail to say, okay, I need to schedule this site for this interval, and being on top of that, inspecting that, finally having the supervision. He's freeing himself up to do that sort of stuff with a mixture of city staff and contractors. So we're starting to get better coverage citywide so we can do this detail work.
And an increased maintenance budget, needed for a while.
Because, I mean, it's historically, not finger pointing, when we do improvements that are really great for a while, when something happens, a car hits them, so they get vandalized, whatever it is, they sit and they sit and they sit and they never get repaired, and a lot of, the excuses that there's no money, which we can't deny, budget's always an issue. So is there forethought into making improvements and maintaining them?
Absolutely. So we're
'Cause I can't get
systematically
highlights
in-
unless I want to maintain it.
Was
Can't get
one-
lash extensions.
It doesn't work. You have to maintain that.
So,
So, over the next couple of years, we're systematically each year increasing our maintenance budget. So it, in the past, has not been anywhere near where it should be. So they're finally allowing us to kind of correct some of these issues.
so we all voted to move forward, so
Absolutely.
we're gonna be next to you, right in earshot.
That's actually a
Especially
critical
right.
concern that a lot of people don't consider when they're programming for major capital improvements, and they go find the money to build that, and they kind of pat themselves on the back and say, oh, look what we've done. Well, they stop there. And you have, beyond that, you have to program before that even happens, how you're going to maintain it. And yeah, there's operating budget issues with that.
I take it that none of the bulb outs are irrigated.
No, correct.
Jamie,
That's maintenance.
Well, now they have to take a truck and water it manually.
Correct.
Water
Right,
the
they have the
trees.
Yeah,
water
the
truck.
truck.
That's why I was asking about the water truck, about trying to get around to all this. Jamie, when they do the maintenance for the weeds and so forth, I mean, it should go without saying, but then I've also heard about how that, with the golf course, they weren't using whatever you would use to mitigate the weeds and so forth, the insects and so forth, because you've got tons of people that walk their dogs. So is this all eco-friendly that they're gonna, or the contractors required to use eco-friendly type of sprays and so forth?
Well, I'm not sure about the golf course because they have a contractor that does.
And I heard
that.
they
That's
want-
not city grounds that does the
Yeah.
golf course.
Okay, well, dogs aren't supposed to be walking up there anyway. The dogs are walking in the streets, and they're walking on the sidewalks, and they're gonna go say hi to the new trees at the bulb outs, and they're gonna get their feet in there, and, is that a requirement, or?
Yeah, Marshall, that was checked. In fact, this question came up when
I'm sure
it was
had
on
to
Lake
have
and
been.
Lucerne. They were doing some weed eradication and they were
Okay.
spraying some stuff. And then we had to check the MSDS sheets, which is a material safety data sheet.
Right.
And they were all eco-friendly, the materials
Okay.
being used.
So it's a
That's
city, it is
required.
a city requirement, that's what I
Yeah.
thought. Okay, so, but you've got contractors who are gonna be doing about half the work, you said, right?
No, you mentioned the golf course.
They don't do weeds,
and I'm
No,
just
but,
saying
okay,
that-
but earlier, when I was mentioning about doing the lawn, the parks or whatever.
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
using
they
the
don't
contractor.
do any of we do that in-house, all the weed control and everything. The contractors are strictly just doing landscaping work, whether they're cutting down vacant
Oh,
lots,
okay.
doing trimming, stuff like that. They're not actually out there spraying anything.
Okay, but if at some point the city decides they need the assistance or they'd like to have a contractor doing that, is that required
They
to
have
be in the
comply with the
contract?
spec. Sure.
They have to, okay, so it's
Yeah.
already in there, they
But
must.
we have our
require-
own
okay.
in-house spray tech though, so we wouldn't,
Okay.
that's not something we'd be contracting out.
I would assume that, but I'm just asking because you know how things go. Okay.
Anything else?
I got one.
Yes, sir.
No parking signs? Any money in there for that?
No parking signs.
Yeah, and where I'm thinking of, and I'm gonna explain this. I live on 6th and C. I leave my house, come off of C Street, go to 6th, and I come up to, I think it's B Street or D Street. But anyhow, there's a van parked all the way up to the edge of the road there. It's like putting a wall up there so you can't see what's coming at you.
At the intersection.
Yeah, at the intersection. Now, there's a law on the books about that because one night I parked my car too close to the edge where I was at, and I got up the next morning, had a ticket sitting on my thing, and it was